By mid-century, the U.S. could see 90 fewer days below freezing.
The length of winter recreation seasons is projected to shrink by 50%.
Two things are certain. Ski seasons will get shorter and operating costs will go up.
Skiing is in trouble. Amidst climate change and economic pressure, skiing is beginning to see a decline each year. As temperatures rise, snowfall quality and quantity begins to decrease, leading to shorter and more pathetic seasons. At the same time, skiing seems to get more and more expensive, leading to less skier turnout and lower attendance. In this economy, many people struggle to afford the basic necessities, let alone try to afford the expensive sport of skiing. From sending my pairs of skis down a mountain is almost unmatched. Seeing the slow death of what is traditional skiing pains me, and watching the seasons get shorter and shorter is a tragic sight. But is there hope? There have been many attempts to try to preserve skiing, both short-term and long-term. Side note, I know I say skiing in this video, but I really mean skiing and snowboarding, both of them, not just skiing. People all over the world are trying to keep skiing alive, so today we're going to be looking at some of the most prominent ways to keep skiing from dying, and answer the question, is there a way to keep skiing alive forever? So let's go into the short-term options first. Artificial snow. Now, if you ski basically anywhere in the world, chances are you've skied on artificial snow. Many big resorts use this technique as it is a conceptually easy way of preserving your slopes. You know, it's not like you have to use an insane amount of science and math to figure out that if you dump fake snow that acts like real snow, it's basically real snow. As climate change heats up the world, artificial snow is becoming more and more prominent. If you went back 100 years and told skiers at the time about this, they'd probably be shocked. They'd have no idea what you're talking about. Nowadays, it's almost a necessity. Artificial snow is beneficial for a variety of reasons. To begin, it is extremely consistent. The nature of just being able to turn on a machine and boom, snow makes resorts rely less on natural weather. It's also quite efficient. As snowmaking technologies develop, it is common for them to use less water and create more snow. Furthermore, most artificial snow is chemically altered, which is why you should not eat the snow. Tell this to your children, parents. Ski resorts add a wide variety of chemicals to let the snow last longer in higher temperatures, preventing them from freezing to ice, and just in general maintaining the quality of the snow. This is amazing, right? This solves all the problems that climate change puts on skiing. Theoretically, all a resort has to do is shower the entire ski hill with snow. But there is one glaring weakness: the cost. Creating artificial snow is, well, very expensive. Ski resorts must purchase snowmaking machines, build pipelines, and find some sort of water source. The production costs alone can cost millions of dollars, which is money that small resorts simply do not have. Then there's the cost of when you actually use the machine. Electricity, water, and just general maintenance can cost hundreds of thousands to maybe even millions per season, depending on how big your resort is. Of course, the bigger the resorts, the more snow machines you will have to purchase, thereby increasing the cost to almost insane levels. There is a ski resort in Ontario called Antoine Mountain. It has no artificial snow, making it completely dependent on the weather. It's no artificial snow because the hill simply just can't afford artificial snow, so it relies on the weather, and that's becoming more and more inconsistent each year. Then again, Antoine Mountain is in a very out of pocket place, very in the middle of nowhere, in a town called Mattawa, which has less than 5,000 people, I'm pretty sure. So getting back to artificial snow, this creates a wall for small resorts. If they cannot afford the cost of snow machines, they simply have to rely on the weather. As the weather continues to heat up, many resorts had to close down because they couldn't afford snow machines and the weather was way too inconsistent to rely on. The other huge weakness as well, artificial snow is a good temporary solution, and it's not invincible to heat. While it's definitely possible to alter the chemical compounds of artificial snow to make it more resistant to heat, you can't make it immune. Okay, this is just a side note, but it'd be really cool if they come up with a snow that does not melt, but acts like snow, but it's not actually snow, but it's invincible to heat. But that's science fiction right now. Maybe not soon though. There are other negatives such as the environmental impact and the difference in texture between real and artificial snow, but the cost is the most prominent weakness, I think. So yeah, while it's definitely a solid short-term option, the sheer insanity of pricing creates a limiting factor for many resorts. It's really sad seeing all the local ski hills needing to close, especially ones that have some untapped potential. Imagine some random ski resort in Colorado that never got its full potential because they simply can't afford artificial snow. So while artificial snow is a good short-term option, the sheer wall its cost creates makes it not a very sustainable long-term option, more of a temporary stall than a permanent solution. So moving on to the next short-term, well kind of short and long-term at the same time, is relying less on skiing. What? How does that make sense? Does it relying less on skiing mean? Well, okay, let me explain. So you may have noticed a trend at some of your ski resorts, especially if your ski resorts are on the more well-funded side, I should say. Some of them have been opening other forms of recreational activities like mountain biking or hiking trails. I've even seen some resorts try treetop trekking, which is very interesting. Now, there are many benefits for this. Firstly, more money. Keeping a business open for the winter can be profitable, but not as profitable as keeping a business open year-round. Instead of being only active in the winter months, ski resorts have created ways to stay open the entire year. And this is just another thing. Skiers might have an incentive to do other activities and stay the entire year, creating them more money. For example, what if there's a pass that's a little more expensive, but gives them access to mountain biking and hiking trails in the summer? Well, that makes them like a year-round customer, making it much more profitable. Secondly, there's sustainability. Ski resorts are trying to rely less and less on their winter months, most ski resorts anyway. As said before, climate change is a serious issue, regardless on your stance on it. It is almost undeniable that like if you actually ski, you'll notice the temperatures are much warmer than they are 30 years ago. Trying to switch your main source from skiing to something more sustainable like mountain biking. Mountain biking isn't going anywhere soon. I mean, if weathers warm up, then that just means more time for mountain biking, I suppose. Mountain biking is also much more accessible than skiing. I think it's generally cheaper than going skiing, in my opinion. Now, how does this relate to skiing? Well, if the ski resort does not make enough money from the ski season, they have something else to rely on to make a steady profit. This allows ski resorts to stay open despite a bad season. It's sort of like a safety net, you know? If the weather is bad, that's okay. There's always the summer season to rely on. If the turnout is bad, that's okay. There's always the summer season to rely on, you know? This allows some ski resorts that may be considering closing a chance to redeem themselves and make enough money to open up next season and start fresh, anew. This can be very profitable in the long term, like over 50 to 100 years. This could be maybe the most profitable option. Now, there isn't that many disadvantages to this. Actually, there's not any huge disadvantages to this, but that is a disadvantage. Let me explain. Once ski resorts realize they can make much more money, much more consistently by doing another recreational activity besides skiing, they may just say, oh, look at these numbers. We're losing money every year doing skiing while we're making a lot of money doing mountain biking or hiking or treetop trekking or anything like that, and they'll just shut down skiing because why should we lose money every year? You know, if you're losing money every year from something, the rational idea is to just cut it off, which is what some resorts might do. And my fear is that one day that skiing isn't profitable anymore and most resorts will just completely switch over. So I guess other recreational activities' greatest strength, its sustainability and profitability, may also be the reason why skiing ceases to exist. Traditional skiing, at least. It's a scary thought, so let's focus on something that primarily benefits the skiing aspect. Now, this is a very interesting solution. Moving up north has basically all the benefits you can think of. Naturally, up north usually has lower temperatures, unless, you know, you're going from the south of the equator to north of the equator, but you know what I mean. If you're moving up north, let's say on top of the equator. Usually, northern regions support a longer ski season with more consistent snow cover as well as lower temperatures. This can reduce the reliance on artificial snowmaking, which lessens the price tag significantly. Northern regions may be less severely impacted by the warming temperatures associated with climate change compared to southern areas. This makes them much more sustainable in the long term for not only skiing but winter sports in general. Basically, this is just another way of stalling out climate change. Moving up north could be a solution that works for tens, maybe hundreds of years. Imagine just like going to like, I don't know, Russia maybe, I don't know, where it's like very cold, very north, and like to be fair, they're not that feeling the effects of climate change that bad up that north, you know? I mean, like, obviously Russia's feeling the effects of climate change, but not as much as if you're skiing in like New York City or Toronto, like, you know what I mean. Now, there are a couple of weaknesses I see from this. One is the lack of accessibility. Moving up north can make it much harder for people to travel there, especially if the conditions are more extreme. This could lead to less attendance, less gear turnout, and adds another variability to the average person. Like, why do I want to drive all the way up north just for skiing? And especially if you're a season pass holder, I don't want to drive that far up, or I don't want to move to another city just for skiing. It's not worth it. I mean, maybe I'll go once a year for a skiing trip, but that's it. So it can create like less profit because like these people, now that it's so like inconvenient and like just unavailable to the average person, they just might think, okay, it's not worth it. I'm just gonna quit skiing, bite the bullet, you know, whatever. Maybe find another hobby. I'll start skating. I'll start golf like every other old guy. That's the problem, you know? Like, a lot of people, they're not that committed to skiing to the point that they'll drive like 3 hours up north every season to just try to get in like their money's worth for the season pass. So that is an extreme problem. But over time, this problem could be mitigated. Adding roads and other pathways to these ski resorts or establishing resorts near northern cities can make it easier for people to access the resort. Like, you don't have to go to the most extreme, desolate, in the middle of nowhere area. Maybe just build a ski hill near like a more northern city. Maybe that's not too populated, but it's high enough elevation, good snow, and just has a population that can support maybe a ski resort, and then maybe other people will come up here for vacations. The city can make money. Now, the other weakness is that you can't just make mountains out of nothing. Like sure, building a small hill will be fine, but if you really want the big stuff, you have to find the mountain. When I mean moving resorts up north, I don't mean obviously physically taking the resorts and just throwing them up north. It means you have to find resorts up north or build them yourself. So the first thing is mountains. Mountains are not found everywhere in the world. Like you need a certain type of like terrain for mountains to exist. There's only certain parts of the world where mountains exist, and just because it's up north doesn't mean there'll be mountains there. Or maybe there are mountains there, but it's too dangerous to set up there. Maybe they're like blizzards and it's just too dangerous for the average individual. You can also build a mountain by creating dirt, but usually you can't just build an entire mountain. Like even if you're building on top of a mountain, it can be very difficult just transferring all the goods up there, doing all that stuff. You can also build a hill from scratch, but then it won't be a mountain. It'll just be like a small hill, and you know, people aren't really gonna take a plane to visit a small hill. Maybe the locals will, but most tourists won't spend all that cash just for a pathetic 400 feet hill. Also, it requires a certain type of mountain, you know? Like there's a reason why people don't ski on Mount Everest, not at least the common people. But if you're an investor in skiing, you might want to consider a further north option for long-term investment, unless of course we reverse climate change somehow. Honestly, this is probably one of the best solutions, not just the solutions I'm stating, but just solutions in general. If you can work around the negative aspects, moving up north can certainly stall out the problem of rising heat, but therein lies the problem, it's a stall. Eventually, if global warming continues like this, which there is definitely a possibility, this option will eventually fall short. Yes, moving resorts up north can be an amazing idea, especially for the next 10, maybe hundreds of years. But when that doesn't work anymore, when temperatures are so hot that even moving up north isn't sustainable anymore, what do we do? Well, there is one solution, and I don't really like it. This is a huge can of worms. Let me introduce you to the potential far future of skiing: dry skiing. Dry skiing, also known as artificial skiing or skiing on artificial surfaces, is the practice of skiing on synthetic materials that mimic the feel of snow. This allows skiing and snowboarding activities to take place year-round, regardless of the weather or snow conditions. The surface of dry skiing is usually like synthetic brushes or mats that imitate the feel of snow that don't look like it and certainly don't melt like it. There are many different materials used, but here are some examples. So Dendix is one of the most common materials. Dendix is made from plastic brittle mat that allows skis to slide while providing enough grip to mimic snow, because you know, if you just put a plastic mat there won't be enough grip. You need a little bit of grip. Snowflex is a more complex material. Snowflex is a white carpet-like surface with cushioning underneath designed to replicate snow. It kind of also looks like snow, at least from afar, so that's another benefit, you know, making you feel like you're in the snow while you're not actually in the snow. And then Nevaplast, which is another popular surface. Nevaplast is like a modular plastic material that can be used for skiing, snowboarding, and even tubing. Let's talk about the benefits of dry skiing. Obviously, there's the benefits of year-round skiing, or at least most of the year, you know, except for like maybe if like a tornado hits or something like that. Since it is no longer relying on snow, you can ski anytime during the year. This makes summer skiing a possibility, which is like going back to our other year-round activities. This could be like another crutch for skiing. Maybe a ski hill has like a dry skiing part of it, and then this can like help keep skiing alive. You know, you can reuse chairlifts, stuff like that, you know. You can keep traditional skiing alive while also keeping, you know, summer skiing alive and adding a more of a other year-round activity. It's also much more sustainable in the long term. Since it no longer relies on cold weather, it is no longer in danger of climate change. It is also much more cost effective. Since you don't have to pay for all the expensive artificial snowmaking, you'll save a lot of money. Think about all the money big resorts can save. Let's look at Whistler Blackcomb or Trois Vallées. Sorry for my pronunciation. Jade Dragon, Powder City. Like the list goes on. And while I'm sure the mats or brushes or whatever they end up using does require some maintenance and does cost like stuff initially, it's difficult to see it being as expensive as making snow, especially in the long term. This will probably make dry skiing cheaper in general, as it costs less to produce more snow, which will make it cost less to ski, since like the ski owners don't have to spend as much on snow, so they don't have to rely on like, I don't know, like high cafeteria cost or high ski rent or high lift ticket cost to like sustain themselves. So it's maybe they'll make their stuff cheaper, who knows. Maybe they won't, maybe they'll just be greedy. This is not certain, however, as there could be some cost that pops up later. Dry skiing is a lot more favorable for beginners, and the fact that there's little danger of ice, strong winds, and other challenging conditions is commonly associated with alpine skiing, and it makes it much better for beginner skiers. Now let's go over some of the weaknesses. The synthetic materials used in dry skiing can cause more wear and tear on skis and snowboards, particularly on the edges and bases, and this could lead to chipping in skis or other damages too. However, if this market continues to expand, it is very likely that they'll develop new skis for this, or they'll just modify the artificial material to make it better for skis. The other weakness is limited terrain. You can't just make an artificial mountain of synthetic materials. You have to build it yourself. This means that ski resorts using these materials will often be much smaller than ski resorts that use snow. Because like, once again, you can't just like plop it on. There's got to be like some sort of, you have to ingrain it, you know. It's like very intricate and stuff. Very intricate. However, this can also be changed. I can see some investors building up huge mountains using artificial material if they see it as a good opportunity, especially in the long run. It's definitely possible that in the next 100 years, many different resorts will use artificial materials instead of snow. I can see some company putting into a long-time project to take the time to implant these materials in an existing mountain if they see it as a good business idea. Imagine the world's only 5,000 meter tall artificial ski resort. Like, that'd be very attractive, especially for international tourists and skiers alike. So the weakness of limited terrain is only really temporary. Dry skiing might be the future of skiing, with its benefits outweighing its drawbacks, in my opinion at least, which aren't even permanent and can be addressed over time. So we've found a way to potentially preserve skiing for a long time, or maybe forever, right? Okay, this is more my personal opinion, but I wouldn't really call dry skiing skiing. Snow is an integral part of what makes skiing, well, skiing, at least for me. Have you ever been on a mountain, or maybe even a small hill? You've probably seen the scenic views below. Snow stretching out as far as the eye can see, covering rocks and trees, and just the sight of snow resting on the beauty of nature is nothing short of magical. As your skis carve into the snow, gliding downhill, it brings a sense of ecstasy that's hard to describe, and I'm sure I'm not alone in feeling this way. Like, imagine when you carve into the snow and that little bit of snow just lifts up there in the back and you just feel amazing, especially if it's a powder day or maybe you're going off-piste or something like that. And the aesthetics of skiing definitely play a big role in its appeal. While artificial skiing might eventually develop its own kind of beauty, it's not the same for me, you know? If you've ever seen snow fall on trees, it's just beautiful. Skiing on actual snow is just different than skiing on something that looks like actual snow, but isn't. This is more of an emotional reason than a logical one. Logically, artificial skiing has the potential to achieve everything that normal skiing does. With time, it can have the same scenery, the same exhilaration of gliding on artificial snow, and it might even be cheaper. But that's the thing, it's artificial. It's just not as real. I'm sure many people who won't mind, especially those who couldn't afford traditional skiing. And some people just won't mind because they just don't care about snow that much, especially if they're from like places where there's not snow, so they're not even used to it, so they might not even like it. Or people who don't like the cold because, you know, it has to be cold for it to snow, so they just don't enjoy the cold, so they'd rather have warm, dry skiing. But I'm not one of those people. I love skiing, and I love almost everything about it. Especially love the snow aspect. I just think that skiing will just not be the same without snow, and it'll feel more, you know, like produced and unnatural and artificial, and that's because it is. That's another problem. If many other people in the world share the same opinion I do, they may not see skiing as the same. This means that the appeal of skiing will decrease dramatically, which could possibly lead to skiers simply either skiing less often or maybe even quitting. This will lead to less demand in the skiing industry, and it's possible that ski resorts will see skiing as a sunk cost and stop offering skiing as a business option, or rather rely on more consistent activities, going back to like mountain biking and hiking and stuff. However, keep in mind that this is all my biased opinion. As said before, I'm sure many people won't care. I'm sure many people will even prefer this artificial material instead of snow. So this can lead to a much bigger business than traditional skiing, and maybe skiing will be something that they even teach in schools at this point. I mean, if anyone can build an artificial snow and plop like artificial stuff on it and like make it so that you can ski on it, it might become much more accessible and much more of a global sport. Opposite effect of what I'm stating. And yes, I do think artificial snow is a much cooler option than all this plastic brittles and stuff. Like, yeah, I know it's technically not really snow, but it looks and feels much more real, and it basically is snow in my opinion. Also, I want you to keep in mind this is long term. It may take tens, even hundreds of years before artificial skiing will overtake traditional skiing, if at all. There will still be consistent snowfall for a long time, and all the strategies I listed can help stall out the death of this traditional skiing. But then again, keep in mind that this is only a stall. Eventually, future ski resorts will have to make a decision. Continue relying on inconsistent and increasing temperatures for traditional skiing, or invest in a safe, long-term option that is dry skiing. Or hopefully, you know, climate change just stops or reverses and we don't have to think about that. That would be a pretty cool third option. In conclusion, it seems like dry skiing is the only true way to preserve skiing. While the temporary solutions, artificial snow, year-round skiing, and moving up north are all solid temporary solutions, all with their strengths and weaknesses, it seems like the only real long-term strategy is dry skiing. I don't really like the idea of the future of skiing being dry, and I truly do hope that the issue of climate change is severely mitigated or even resolved before it has to come to this. I truly believe that snow plays an integral role in the beauty of skiing, and I hope that it can stay that way. So to wrap things up, let's look at the question I asked at the start of the video. Is there a way to keep skiing alive forever? No. Unless the climate suddenly stops warming, or we find a solution to climate change in general, traditional skiing, as we currently know it, will not last forever. somewhere, somehow, traditional skiing, like many other things of this world, will evolve into something very different, or perhaps even cease to exist. But let's hope that isn't anytime soon.